it had taken hits over the course of the year, but that was a particularly, large and one and very abrupt. And we're seeing a run on the bank start, and that was leading to, $4 billion a day of client withdrawals. At that point, we started calling prospective, sources of financing because I was nervous about what was going to happen there. If you rewind even a few days, I was a little bit nervous, but not on nearly the same scale. And I was thinking about, risks that were substantially less.
When you say you were nervous, you were nervous the company was going to go under, you were nervous you were going to get caught. What were you nervous about? On November 6th or before then? Either.
So I think before then, what I was nervous about was that basically, and this started, I would say, November 2nd or so, when there was, leaked Alameda balance sheet, through CoinDesk, and when I started to think a bit more about this, I was nervous that that would lead to. I don't think any of the borrow lending desks, to my knowledge, owned a lot of FTT. I think a lot of them, may have been using it as collateral, or taking it as collateral. I don't think they owned it though, or were going to sell it. And I think that most of them ended up closing down effectively all of their lines with Alameda one way or another. And so at that point, I think that was close to a sunk cost, and so I wasn't viewing it as having any impact on FTT in particular. I did view it as important for the industry's health. I did view it as a thing where I wanted to try to keep the industry stable. But I don't think it had any, really large FTT specific impact.
And did it have it? You didn't think it had any impact? It would have had no impact on Alameda or FTX if, for example, BlockFi were to have failed?
I don't think it would have had large direct impact. And the reason I say that is that I believe that Alameda ended up returning the vast majority of its open, borrows of its margin positions with the borrow lending desks in the middle of this year anyway. And so at that point, there wasn't that much left to save from that. At that point, I think the bigger thing was just, and then, what happened here was a 95% down move over the course of a year, and a 60% down move over a few day period with very little liquidity, and all happening at once in all of these coins in a correlated fashion, in which hedges didn't mean as much also because this was a specific crash on assets associated with Alameda Research rather than all assets. And so, even correlated hedges had limited use there, and a run on the bank at the same time. And all of that are things, in retrospect, I should have expected might happen in an extreme scenario, because that's how markets work. And, we've seen other examples of that in history where when things get really bad, they get really bad for all of the relevant things at once in a very direct and correlated and quick way.
I want to go back to the BlockFi acquisition for a moment. How much money do you think Alameda, I'd said that they had a lot of FTT, but that Alameda had borrowed from BlockFi at the time of the bailout?
I honestly don't know, but I would have guessed like 100 million, maybe a couple $100 million, but I honestly don't know the answer to that. I wasn't like running on, I wasn't paying detailed attention, but that's my guess. Sometime I am, up there talking about what happened to our representatives, or, wherever else is most appropriate.
How concerned are you about criminal liability at this point?
So I don't think that, obviously I don't personally think that I have, but I think the real answer is that's not, it sounds weird to say, but I think the real answer is that's not what I'm focusing on. There's going to be a time and a place for me to sort of think about myself and my own future, but I don't think this is it. Like right now, I mean, look, I've had a bad month. This has not been a fun month for me, but that's not what matters here. Like, what matters here is the millions of customers. What matters here is all the stakeholders in FTX who got hurt, and trying to do everything I can to help them out. And as long as that's the case, like, I don't think that what happens with me is the important part of that, and I don't think that's what it makes sense for me to be focusing on. I think that the U.S. team took actions to seize some of the assets and put it in custody from the exchange. I believe that it has been announced that the Bahamian regulators took some of the assets into safekeeping as well around that same time. And I think there may have, in addition to both of those, also been some actually improper access of assets on the exchange. And I don't know the details of that. I don't have the resources to trace through exactly what happened there. And I don't know who is behind that third part.
I want to go back to one thing about the Bahamas. The Bahamian authorities have now admitted effectively that they ordered the transfer, it sounds like, of certain FTX assets to wallets under their control after the U.S. bankruptcy was filed. Did you help them with that? Did you discuss that with them?
So I can't discuss specifics, but I will note that prior to Chapter 11 having been filed, and so, to my knowledge, all American customers and all American regulated businesses and exchanges here are, I think, at least in terms of client assets, are okay. Obviously, I don't know what's happened with, you can make your own judgments about the enterprise value of those businesses, but.
Over the summer, you paid a $2.5 billion loan to Barry Silbert's Genesis. This was in August. And I was just trying to think through the dynamics of what might have been happening at your firm and was wondering, where did the money come from?
So when you say you did that, I presume that that's Alameda Research that did that? Is that right?
Yes, yeah. That's the case.
So I don't have all of the details there, but my understanding is that, and I don't know exactly what was going on Genesis's side then, I don't know now, but my understanding is I believe Genesis tried to call in a large number of loans from Alameda. I believe that happened, and that closed down a lot of positions that Alameda had open with Genesis and other trading desks. And that was what I was thinking at the time. And I think what I'd say is, look, there are a lot of things that I think have really massive impact on the world, and ultimately that's what I care about the most. And I mean, I think frankly that the blockchain industry could have substantial positive impact, but I was thinking a lot about bed nets and malaria, about saving people from diseases no one should die from, about animal welfare, about pandemic prevention, and what could be done on a large scale to help mitigate those things. I think matter, and they're among the most important things to me. Separately from that, there's a bunch of bullshit that regulated companies do